This is Agriculture Today, and I'm Samantha Bennett with the K-State Radio Network. We begin today's show with an update on alfalfa weevils in Kansas. From K-State field crop entomologist Jeff Whitworth. Jeff shares that alfalfa weevils are officially hatching after the back and forth of warm and cool weather the last several weeks. He provides advice on sampling fields, treatment thresholds, and how spraying can sometimes lead to a boom in pea aphid populations. Also ahead, Kansas 4-H is celebrating 100 years of Discovery Days this summer. Kansas 4-H program coordinator Dona Ratliff joins us to highlight the amazing summer program that provides high school-aged Kansas youth the opportunity to explore all of their options for their future. According to the latest data, Kansas ranked 17th for total milk production in the United States in 2022 and 15th in production per cow. K-State dairy specialist Mike Brouk ends today's show by taking a closer look at the findings. That and more is coming up ahead on Agriculture Today. This is Agriculture Today. We are joined now by Jeff Whitworth. He is our K-State field crop entomologist, and he's joining us today to provide an update on alfalfa weevils across the state and also some information on pea aphids. So before we get into things, Jeff, thanks for being here today.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
Absolutely. So like I said, an update on alfalfa weevils. We've been talking about them the last several segments we've done now, and they're here now.
They are here, and they're here to stay for a little while at least. Alfalfa weevils probably our first serious major pest that we see in all crops every year. Occasionally we see something in wheat a little earlier, but generally it's alfalfa weevils in alfalfa because they're a cool weather insect, as alfalfa is. So they come around earlier, it seems to me, every year, at least earlier than we're prepared for them to. This year is no difference. The thing with the alfalfa weevils, weather allows insects 100% controls their development, and it's the same with alfalfa weevil. Alfalfa weevil eggs are a short little recap of their biology. Alfalfa weevil adults lay eggs in the fall in alfalfa in the stems, either vertical stems or horizontal stems, so they're well hidden. That's why when we go out and try and find alfalfa weevil eggs, you can see them, by the way. They're kind of a orange or a golden color, and it's kind of neat to go out and try and sample for them, but they're well hidden. And the adult weevils come back in the fall, and they lay eggs in the stems. The eggs in the stems will start overwintering and start accumulating thermal units or growing degree days. And we've developed a thermal unit accumulation system or growing degree day system to be able to predict when these eggs hatch starting January 1st, which we've talked about before. It's really pretty useful. But again, you use the system and you got to go out and ground truth whether the eggs are really hatching or not, because every little field's just a little bit different by a week or two. Anyway, the eggs are laid in the fall and they're laid all winter. Anytime the temperature's over 45 to 48 degrees, the alfalfa weevil adults active, they're laying eggs, and then the eggs will hatch in the spring. And they can hatch, I've seen them hatch anywhere from the last week in February through May, depending upon the temperatures of that year, okay? So that's why lots of times there can be a big disparity between when eggs start hatching versus when they continue to hatch, and we can have real problems trying to time sprays with the alfalfa weevil because of that. The main thing is you got to get out and sample, and sampling is really pretty easily done, I think, in my opinion. You just go out and pull stems, shake them vigorously in a white bucket, count the number of larvae that fall out, and remember how many stems you had, and that gives you your infestation level. One of the triggers that we use for treating for alfalfa weevil is a 30 to 50% infestation level, which means if you're doing the stem shake bucket method, you get 30% to 50% infestation. That's when we start treating with an insecticide. Some may start at 10%, some may a little bit later, but ours is 30 to 50%. That happens pretty quickly. But if we get cold temperatures, that will slow down the hatch also. So when they're active, and they're only active once a year, that's the time when we get spring colliding with winter temperatures and rain, sleet, snow, all kinds of conditions, wind. And the weevils are still out there feeding 24/7, anytime the temperature's over 45 degrees. They don't mind the wind, the rain, they're feeding. This year, we haven't had much moisture, so the impact of the feeding in the weevils is showing up a lot more. Plants are struggling. They're being stressed because of moisture. The impact on the feeding is really showing up a lot. So a lot of guys are spraying a little bit earlier than they would. That's all well and good, but one of the problems is, remember I said these eggs are being laid all winter long, anytime the temperature's over 45 or 48 degrees, and that continues into the spring. So if you have enough eggs laid, you're going to have another flush of eggs hatching and therefore another bunch of larvae feeding on the crop. So if you go out and you determine your treatment threshold at 50% 2 weeks ago and you sprayed, that will probably do a pretty good job of killing the larvae, but then you're going to have more eggs hatch. So you got to go out 10 days and be sure and look at the reentry interval for whatever insecticide you use before you go back out in the field. But go back out and monitor the plants 10 days to 14 days after you treated. These insecticides only last 10 to 14 days. So once you've treated and those eggs are going to continue to hatch, there's not going to be any vegetation that has the residue on it from the previous insecticide. So you may have to go back, you may have to spray twice, you may have to spray 3 times. Generally, twice is enough, but in some years, where we have some cool temperatures, where it slows down the hatch and the growing of the larvae, you have to spray, and then again it slows them down, and you have to spray again. So alfalfa weevils, they come about early in the spring or late in the winter or both. They're really difficult to deal with, I think, just because they're feeding 24/7. You got the vagaries of the temperatures and the wind that you have to deal with as far as management goes. So it really makes it tough. And that first cutting is really vulnerable to alfalfa weevils. They can just decimate, completely defoliate that first cutting if left unchecked. The key about spraying is make sure you get good coverage. When you use an insecticide or any pesticide, it's all about timing. Whether it's a herbicide, fungicide, insecticide, whatever, timing is very important. It's the same with the alfalfa weevil. It's all about timing. Make sure you get the insecticide out there before the weevils do too much damage. And they're going to be out there for probably 2 to 3 more weeks, and then they'll pupate. So once they've pupated, it doesn't do any good to treat them.
Sure. So a consequence of spraying, though, is something to keep in mind here is the opportunity that leaves for other insects to kind of come into these fields, right?
Yes, great point. Right now there are some, and every year this early season, there are pea aphids in most of our alfalfa fields. This year's no exception, although there aren't too many pea aphids right now. At least I haven't been made aware of too many. But once you spray for alfalfa weevils, it will control the weevils. It will kill the pea aphids also, but it will kill any beneficials that are out there. So if there's any lady beetles or green lacewings that are out helping control the pea aphid populations, it will kill them. The problem with that is then the pea aphids will come back quicker than the other insects. They are aphids. They reproduce without the benefit of a male. They don't lay eggs. They just start producing female nymphs, and those nymphs, after 4 to 7 days, they'll produce more females. So those aphid populations can explode quite quickly. So just be aware there's some aphids around. There's mainly the pea aphid, but there's also a few cow pea aphids around. Same thing. They have the same kind of behavior, except the pea aphid's a more early season aphid and the cow pea aphid's a little later season, but they're out there now. So when you do treat, you're going to kill the aphids, you're going to kill the beneficials, you're going to kill the weevil larvae, hopefully, but then the aphids are going to build back up quicker, and so you may have another problem. There are some products, some insecticides that are more specifically designed for aphid control and a little easier on non-target organisms or beneficials. Those are a little more expensive. You can use those if you really want to get good control of aphids, but generally speaking, at least I have a hard time recommending treating for pea aphids in alfalfa, just because if they are there and if there are any beneficials or when the beneficials start to come back, they have to have something to feed on. And those pea aphids early season are usually what the beneficials, green lacewings, lady beetles, etc., are utilizing as the host to build up their populations. And those populations can expand out into sorghum, soybeans, corn, other crops later on. But early on, generally speaking, it's the pea aphid populations that are utilized by our beneficials in alfalfa to help those populations build up. When you spray just for aphids, then you're going to decimate those populations, and that will hurt that. But again, especially this year where we have a lot of stress in our alfalfa, when we add stress with pea aphids or any insect feeding on that crop, you're just reducing the amount of yield available, and it's just going to hurt the crop that much more. So it's consideration. This year, so far at least, it's been really a dry year and really causing a lot of stress in the alfalfa. So just some considerations when you're out looking at the alfalfa. Weevils, every field I've seen throughout north central Kansas in the last 10 days has exceeded the treatment threshold, and a lot of fields are being treated. Again, you have to get in line, and when you have wind and rain, that backs you up, and the weevils are going to continue to feed. So keep that in mind, and good luck.
Well, Jeff, thanks so much for this update. I know alfalfa weevils, like you said, are kind of those first pests that enter into our systems this time of year, so something to be mindful of for sure. And then, of course, the consequences potentially for pea aphids.
Yep, my pleasure. Thank you very much.
Yep, absolutely. Once again, everyone, that was K-State field crop entomologist Jeff Whitworth joining us for a conversation on alfalfa weevils and pea aphids. We'll be back with more ahead on Agriculture Today. This is Agriculture Today, and we are joined now by Dona Ratliff. She is the program coordinator for Kansas 4-H, and she's joining us today to talk about the upcoming 4-H Discovery Days. So, Dona, thanks for being here with us.
Thank you for asking us to be here.
Absolutely. So, I understand this year is a big anniversary year for the Discovery Days here at K-State.
It is. This is the 100th anniversary of the Discovery Days event. It was previously known as Roundup. There were a couple of years in there, of course, when it wasn't held because of the world wars going on. And, of course, then we did have one remote one or virtual one because of COVID. But otherwise, we've had hundreds of kids coming to K-State campus for years now.
Absolutely. And these Discovery Days, I understand the goal is to really open youth's eyes to all of the opportunities that are out there for their future, right?
That's exactly right. This is what we call kind of our college and career readiness event. So we're bringing high school-aged youth to campus here just to kind of get their feet wet. They can test things and see what future avenues are open for them.
Absolutely. Get their interest piqued in some of these important areas.
Exactly. Finding their spark.
Absolutely. Wonderful. So you mentioned high school-aged kids. So what age groups are those really?
So these are 13 to 18-year-old youth that are welcome to campus here. They will be coming to Kansas State University. We stay in the dorms. We have passes to eat in the cafeterias there on campus. And so they get to learn a little bit of their independence and get the feel for that as well. But it's all in a great atmosphere because we have sessions going on during the days and fun events in the evenings.
So a bit of a preview for that college experience that they can anticipate.
Exactly.
Wonderful. So I know that the timeline of this programming is also changing this year. So tell us a bit about that.
So we have always run into other high school activities going on at that same time, including FFA's state conference as well. And so we have moved ours back to June 7th through the 9th this year. And so it shouldn't fall at a time when they may have other commitments already, but this will give them a chance to be able to do all the kind of activities they want to.
Yeah, opening their doors so they can broaden their horizons even more.
Exactly.
That's wonderful. So I know you mentioned there's going to be a ton of events that go on during the days, and those events, they're going to break into two different sessions, really. So tell us a bit about those.
Yes. So they would come in the first day. That Wednesday, we have sessions that are called Spark sessions. So those are 1-hour sessions where the youth get to pick a couple of those sessions to attend that afternoon. And they just get to kind of go in and learn brief information about different areas. So it could be something from meat judging or YQCA certification. It also could be something as fun as learning about what our 48 hours of 4-H event is, where we have our youth council come in and talk to them about community service in their area. And then the next day, on that Thursday, we have a little more extensive sessions. So those are half-day sessions, and the youth get to go into these sessions, and these are a little more deep dive so that they kind of narrow down what they're looking at. And, this could be something as exciting as learning to fly drones. We have trips to Manhattan Votech. If Votech is maybe a calling that they're interested in, they can go learn a little bit about what Manhattan Votech offers. We just have all sorts of things. And, of course, here being on K-State campus, we have lots of ag-related fields. So you could learn what the flour milling center is like. You could learn about feeding or animal reproduction. There's just so many offerings.
Would you say any of those tend to fill up a bit quicker than others?
There are a few that are they're limited in space because of the scope of what they cover, but the chuck wagon cooking is one that always fills up very quick. We have an ATV program this year where a few youth will get to go and get safety certified, and so that'll be exciting too, and that's very limited because they are going to be utilizing ATVs.
Yeah, especially this highlights how hands-on these activities are that these kids are getting to do.
Exactly. They really are involved in it.
Wonderful. So I know that you mentioned the college and career planning aspect of this. So it's taking place here at K-State, and that lends access to some of our admissions people here.
Yes,
as well.
And we actually usually ask them to come and talk just briefly, especially on the last day of the event, to kind of talk to the youth about, prepping for whatever their next step is, financial planning on that, looking at what kind of classes they're taking right now so they're prepared for what they are interested in the future.
Wonderful. So not only just a fun summer experience for these kids, but one that's really adding value to their lives.
Exactly. We want them to have fun. We have lots of fun evening activities planned as well. But we want them to start thinking, because we know nowadays many of these kids are taking a lot of college classes while they're in high school. And if that's the case, let's have them try some things out, see what they're interested in, make sure that they're taking the kind of classes they need to.
Absolutely. No better time to do that than when you are excited about these new avenues as a youth.
Exactly.
Wonderful. And I know this year you're adding a new special event to this Discovery Day programming, and that's the Emerald Circle. Tell us a bit about it.
Well, we did have it last year as well, but this is something new that we've started. And so Emerald Circle is where our Kansas 4-H Foundation is celebrating our State Project Award recipients. And so they will be highlighted on an evening event, and then we have entertainment that night afterwards. But it's a great option for these high school youth to come in and see. Maybe this is something they haven't tried before, but these State Project Award winners are being highlighted, and they can see what, moving forward, they might want to try.
Absolutely. So a chance to honor these kids that have done great work, but also inspire others.
Exactly.
Well, Donna, if listeners are tuning in and they have a high school aged kid, or they themselves are listening to this and they happen to be one and they're interested, where can they learn more about it?
So check out with your local extension offices as well, but you can always go to our kansas4h.org website, and it'll be listed under the new events. So Discovery Days, and it is $210 for youth to attend, and it's June 7th through the 9th.
Yeah, again, a good reminder on that timeline changing a week later than most years in the past.
Yes.
Great. Well, Donna, I can't thank you enough for joining us today. And if you have any, last thoughts on advice for youth that are on the fence about potentially getting involved, what would you say to encourage them to take part in this summer?
I really think this is a time and an opportunity for them to just try new things. They may be really thinking that they don't know what they want to do, or they have an idea of, yes, this is what I'm really focused on. Come meet some of the professors. Come meet some youth that are already engaged in those fields and see what's going on, and find out if that really is what you're thinking. And maybe you're not sure. Here's a great opportunity to come and try 3 different avenues and figure out which one kind of fits you better.
Fantastic. What a great opportunity. But thank you again, Donna. A great opportunity to hear from you about these events.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it. And we look forward to having anybody who's excited to be involved come to Discovery Days.
Absolutely. Once again, everyone, that was Dona Ratliff. She is a program coordinator for Kansas 4-H, joining us to talk about the upcoming 4-H Discovery Days this summer. We're cutting to a short break now, but before we do, a quick word from Mary Marsh with the Kansas Wheat Commission.
While every Kansas producer's eyes are understandably fixed on the sky and the weather forecast, groups like Kansas Wheat are closely monitoring National Farm Bill negotiations for longer-term impacts on their operations. Some of these programs, like crop insurance and disaster relief, help safeguard operations in times of need. Others, like the Market Access Program and Foreign Market Development Program, help ensure farmers continue to have access to market opportunities at home and abroad. Half of the wheat grown in the United States is exported, so our producers understand the importance of trade and market development, said Shana DeGroat, Kansas Wheat Director of Membership and Governmental Affairs. These successful economic development programs have a significant impact on the farm and general U.S. economy. The MAP and FMD program are part of public-private partnerships authorized in the Farm Bill that provide competitive grants for export development and promotion activities to nonprofit farm and ranch organizations that contribute funds from checkoff programs and industry support. U.S. Wheat Associates, which represents U.S. wheat farmers in overseas markets, is a participant in the MAP and FMD programs. Private funding for U.S. wheat exports market development activities come from 19 state wheat commissions, including Kansas Wheat, and qualifies U.S. wheat to compete for program funds. These programs have a direct impact on exports, the farm economy, and the overall macroeconomy, but these programs need more investment to strengthen their effectiveness. MAP's authorized funding has not changed since 2006, and FMD funding has remained the same since 2002. So inflation and sequestration have significantly eroded the ability to compete with other countries who are steadily investing more in their agricultural export promotion efforts, wrote U.S. Wheat and the National Association of Wheat Growers in a joint press release. Recognizing the importance of these programs, lawmakers introduced bipartisan and bicameral legislation in both the U.S. Senate and the U.S. House of Representatives to double the funding for this pair of agricultural export market development programs administered by the USDA's Foreign Agricultural Service. A recent econometric study conducted by agricultural economists at IHS Markit and Texas A&M University predicted that doubling funding for these programs would generate an additional $44.4 billion in U.S. agricultural exports over 2024 to 2029 time period. This would directly benefit farmers, livestock producers, dairy operators, and small businesses as they work to maintain and expand their global presence. Learn more about these impacts at www.agexportscount.org. Both bills must now be considered by the Senate Agriculture Committee and the House Agriculture Committee. Wheat growers can help encourage support for this effort by letting their members of Congress know how vital these marker bills and their results of increasing agricultural exports are to the farm economy. Wheat growers can participate in the campaign on the NOG website at wheatworld.org/support trade programs in the 2023 Farm Bill. Fill out your information and click submit. A letter will automatically be sent to your two senators and representative. With Kansas Wheat, this is Mary Marsh.
Once again, everyone, that was Mary Marsh with the Kansas Wheat Commission providing a Wheat Scoop update. We'll be back with more ahead on Agriculture Today.
This is Agriculture Today. Along with Samantha Bennett, I'm Jeff Whitworth. We end today's program with this week's milk lines. According to the latest data, Kansas slipped one notch in the state rankings for total milk production in the U.S. in 2022 and remained 15th in production per cow. K-State dairy specialist Mike Brouk takes a closer look at the findings.
Today, I'd like to visit with our Kansas dairy producers concerning how we stacked up for 2022 milk production. Our milk market administrator always does a great job of looking at the annual numbers across the United States, and wanted to share a little bit from their report that was just published. As we look at milk production across the United States in 2022, milk production increased over 2021. Not a lot, 0.01%, but it was an increase over 2021. And in fact, this was the 13th year in a row where we saw record levels of milk production across the United States. As an industry, we're still continuing to grow, maybe a little bit slower than what we have in previous years. Over the past 5 years, we've grown in total milk production by about 5.1%. So the increase in 2022 was much less than some of the previous year-over-year increases, but still a very solid growth point for our industry. Considering that 2022 was also a record year for raw milk price on our dairies across the United States, combined with slight increase in production, makes for what we might see as a very favorable situation for 2023. Even with record milk prices, we did not grow very significantly over the previous year. So as we look at the balance between production and consumption, moving forward into 2023, it will probably make the downhill slide in milk price a little bit less than what it might have been if we would have had significant increases in milk production in 2022. So, how did the year stack up for the state of Kansas? In terms of total milk production, we slipped to number 17 compared to other states. South Dakota nosed ahead. Previously, they had been number 17, and they increased to number 16. Again, it's just a nose ahead. South Dakota has some advantages when it comes to the I-29 corridor, also some advantages when it comes to feed production in that part of the region. However, one of the things that that region currently lacks is increased capabilities of processing, something that Kansas gained with the Hillmore expansion into Dodge City. So as we look to the future, I would guess these two states are going to go back and forth a little bit as to who's ahead and who's behind. One of the interesting things about the production level in South Dakota is you look at the pounds per capita that is actually produced. So South Dakota doesn't have a very large population, so actually their pounds per capita is about 45, almost 4,600 pounds per person. Here in Kansas, we averaged in 2022 about 1,400. So South Dakota is actually the third highest per capita production in the United States currently, and we would rank somewhat below that. So in terms of production per cow, Kansas maintained its current position of number 15. That's what we were in 2021. As we look at the overall milk production picture across the United States, some interesting things are going on. West of the Mississippi, milk production continues to grow in many of our states. As we look east of the Mississippi River, particularly to the southeast United States, there continues to be a lack of milk production in relationship to the number of people that live in those regions. So Kansas has the advantage in that we are actually fairly close and able to ship milk into those areas that are deficit. We'll continue to do that as we have for the past 20 years or so, in making us an export state that basically balances milk plants across the southeast part of the United States. This is Mike Brouk with K-State Research and Extension, encouraging our dairy producers across the state to keep up the good work as we strive to become a top 10 dairy state. In order to do that, it's going to require the production from new cows as well as the cows that are already here and expansion of those existing dairies.
Thanks, Mike. And that'll do it for this edition of Agriculture Today. For Samantha Bennett, I'm Jeff Whitworth. This is the K-State Radio Network.